Alright, hello everyone, it's me, Miss Nasworth. I'm back to tell you a few things about colons, that pesky punctuation mark that we see a lot, but we don't always know how to use. So let's go ahead and get started. As you're taking notes, if you're using fill-in-the-blank notes, you're going to pay attention to those things in red. If you are creating your own notes, make sure the things in red are within your notes, because remember, if you try to copy everything down, you're going to get a little lost. So if you're creating your own notes, put your notes in your own words, but make sure you're actually including those things in red. So let's get started. I want to show you a great example of the use of a colon in a mentor text. Remember, a mentor text is a text used by authors, or text from authors. They're published, well-crafted examples. So in this case, let's look at it. The deputy told me to empty my pockets. 2 quarters, a penny, a stick of bubble gum, and a roll of grip tape for my skateboard. That comes from a book called Flush by Carl Hyson. So I want you to look carefully at that sentence above. What do you notice about the sentence? I want you to pay a special attention to how it's written, structured, or punctuated. Pay very close attention to how it's punctuated. On your paper or in your notes, I want you to write down all the things that you notice about the sentence. I'm going to ask you to pause the video just so that you can write down, I don't know, 3 or 4 things about how it's written, structured, or punctuated. So now that you have those written down, I want to take a look at another piece of mentor text from Jerry Spinelli. 93 million miles of space in front of me, and every inch of it seemed packed with the things I was afraid of. High places, cramped places, dark places, 1,000-leggers, speed, flying, death, change, time, pain, failure, criticism, roller coasters, train tracks, being wrong, being smelly, being late, being stupid, being rejected, black mambas, leeches, hantavirus, losing, deep water, uncertainty, being buried alive, being caught, being afraid, myself. I could see my epitaph. Here lies William J. Tuppence. He was afraid. And as I said, that was a mentor text from Jerry Spinelli, Smiles to Go. So how is this sentence, and yes, it's a big, long sentence, big, long mentor text. How is it similar to the last sentence? I want you to pause the video and write down, let's say, 3 similarities that you see between the 2. Well, hopefully you noticed that both of those mentor texts had a colon, and they also had a list of words or phrases following the colon. So the very first use of a colon is to introduce a list. So the first way we use colons is to introduce a list. But I want you to notice that the colon presents a list, but it never occurs immediately after a verb, because everything in front of the colon is actually a complete sentence. So, correct. My mom ordered me to throw away everything still left in my car. Half of a Snickers bar, old love notes from an ex-boyfriend, and 12 pennies I had to pry off of the console. I might tell you a little bit about my car and how it needs to be cleaned. But notice we've got this colon here, but we've also got in green a whole complete sentence. My mom ordered me to throw away everything still left in my car. And then after the colon, we've got this list. Half of a Snickers bar, old love notes from an ex-boyfriend, and 12 pennies I had to pry off of the console. But how we see it a lot, and it's not technically correct, is all the things left in my car were half of a Snickers bar, old love notes from an ex-boyfriend, and 12 pennies I had to pry off of the console. We still have this colon, and it's really not used appropriately because in front of the colon, we don't have a complete sentence. All the things left in my car were. It doesn't really complete the thought. It leaves you hanging, so it's not the best way to write the sentence. I would actually go back and write this way, because it also tells you like a little bit about why you're talking about the things left in your car, because my mom told me to throw them away. So let's look at some other mentor sentences with colons. Stanley's father was an inventor. To be a successful inventor, you need 3 things: intelligence, perseverance, and just a little bit of luck. So in this case, we've got a sentence. To be a successful inventor, you need 3 things. We've got that colon right there, and then we've got a list right behind it. When I stepped out into the bright sunlight from the darkness of the movie house, I had only 2 things on my mind: colon, Paul Newman, and a ride home. So even though this is just a list of two things. Still works as a list. And then I look at my little sister and think how she has inherited the best qualities of our family has to offer. If I put a period here instead of that colon, I would have a complete sentence. But in this case, I put a colon because I'm not done yet. I'm going to have a list of things. And that is from Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. And notice, not all lists are just single words. In this case, we've got some single words and a phrase. We've got a phrase and a phrase, and we've got phrase, phrase, phrase. So don't think that all lists are only single words put together with commas. Sometimes it's a list of phrases. But I want to look at this new use of a colon. So I want you to think we've introduced a list, but now let's look at this mentor text, also from Holes. Obviously, Louis Sachart really likes to use colons, and he does them well. Here's a good rule to remember about rattlesnakes and scorpions. Colon. If you don't bother them, they won't bother you, usually. So this is a different use of the colon, because after the colon, we don't have a list. We have something different. There's only one word to describe Steph Curry's shots. Cold. Got that colon. And then behind the colon, we've got a single word. Single word is definitely not a list. So how are we doing this? How is this colon being used? Well, it takes us to our use number 2. Here, the colon really works to create a suspenseful pause and then introduce a sentence, like up here, or a phrase, or even a single word which then goes back to describe or connect something in the original sentence. Precolon. Kind of like how an appositive phrase does when you interrupt a sentence or when you close a sentence. So cold is describing Steph Curry's shots. But I want you to notice that the colon actually works almost like a drum roll. It creates suspense that you don't know what's going to come next. There's only one thing to remember about rattlesnakes and scorpions. Well, you're going to want to know what you need to remember about rattlesnakes and scorpions because they're kind of scary, creepy crawlies, and you want to make sure that you know what is a good role to remember. Here, you don't know what the author is going to say about Steph Curry's shots. Maybe you feel one way about Steph Curry, and they feel a different way. And so, therefore, the colon creates a little suspense. What's this person going to say? So if we were to create a pattern for the sentence tag, it might look like sentence colon extra info. So think about that other pattern we talked about a couple of weeks ago, sentence comma closer. This is the same pattern, except for we're adding this colon to create a little extra drama, a little extra flair. But if you're going to do that, you got to make sure that what's behind the colon actually is worth the wait. So I want you to choose one of the sentences above to mimic and create a sentence of your own. I was originally going to have you write that sentence on your note card to use as your exit ticket, but since you're probably listening to this outside of the classroom, I don't want you to feel like you have to do an exit ticket. But it is kind of nice to try to mimic how a mentor text is used. There are a few other times to use a colon. There aren't as many, there aren't as many opportunities. You don't see these as often. Well, I guess some of them you see pretty often, but maybe we see them so often we forget. So use number 3, we can use them before a quotation. Now, be careful. Normally we use a comma in front of a quotation, but if we have a quotation that has a whole sentence in front, so here's our quotation, don't drink the water. That's what someone actually said. And if we have a whole sentence in front, she offered the following advice. Now we put a semicolon because we have this whole sentence, and then we can have that quotation afterwards. But notice the colon kind of does what we just talked about. It creates some suspense. I mean, if someone's giving you advice, you want to know what the advice is. So the colon makes you pause just a little bit longer, and it creates a little extra suspense. You can also use it after a greeting in a business letter. Last 6 weeks we talked about a friendly letter that you might write to someone that you have a pretty good relationship with, maybe a first name basis or someone you see all the time. But in a business letter, that's a little more formal, and you're going to want to have a little more formal punctuation, and so therefore we use a quotation, or excuse me, we use a colon. So to whom it may concern. We don't know who we're writing to. Maybe we're writing in reference to a job or to get someone else a job. We're not sure who's going to be reading it, so we don't want to offend them by saying, Dear Mr. So-and-so or Dear Miss So-and-so. So we're just going to address it to whom it may concern, and then because it's formal, we use our formal punctuation, which is a colon. Use number 5 is to separate chapter and verse in Scripture, like John 3:16. So there's the chapter, there's the verse. Or we can use it for number 6 to separate hours from minutes and time. This is probably the most common way that we know colons because we see it written this way all the time. We've got the hours, 12 o'clock, from the minutes, 5 minutes after 12. And then use number 7 is to show ratios. You're going to see this a lot in math class, or maybe, like in this example, a recipe. To cook rice, you should use 2 cups of water for each cup of rice, or a 2-to-1 ratio. 2 cups of water to 1 cup of rice. Who knew you were going to get a cooking tip along with some punctuation help? So that's how we use colons. They are, remember the 2 little dots on top of each other. We can use them to introduce a list. We can use them to create some suspense. We can use them at the end of a greeting on a business letter. We can use them for time and ratios. We can use them to introduce a quotation, as long as we have a complete sentence in front. So make sure that you keep these notes handy as you begin your assignment. And if you have any further questions, please be sure to come see your English teacher, or you can always come see me, Miss Nasworth. Have a great day.